We have a absolutely spectacular last session to inform and elucidate you all with. So let me now hand over to the managing editor of Time magazine, Rick Stengel.
I think
Are we all moving up?
Oh, come on.
blow.
Thank you. That is the South African ritual blowing of the horn for the final panel of the Global Forum. Now, this is the panel that you've all been waiting for. It is going to be fantastic. What you have here today is something that you never see in life, right? Sometimes we talk to some of the older folks, sometimes we talk to the youth, but you rarely see them talking together. And what you're going to see today is a dialogue between the greatest of the elders, as I'm about to introduce, and some of the future elders, the people, young people who are going to achieve great things for this continent. Now, does everybody know who or what the elders is or are? I'm not sure about the grammar of that. The elders is a group that was formed by Nelson Mandela not too long ago, 2007. And they have a complicated definition, but I think of them as a group of slightly superannuated superheroes who jet into the world's trouble spots and solve the world's problems. Now, they don't define themselves that way, but what it is an independent group of men and women who, because they are independent, because they no longer have to run for office or return to office, they can speak truth to power and speak truth all around the planet, and that is what the elders have been doing. I will start with Mary Robinson, the first female president of Ireland, then the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, a woman who grew up fighting for justice from the very beginning. She became a young lawyer for human rights in Ireland. She became an academic. She fought for things that we now take for granted, like women serving on juries in Ireland. She did an extraordinary job as president of Ireland, helped usher in the peace in Northern Ireland, and she now has a foundation in New York, which she'll talk a little bit about, which is also about human rights. My good friend, Graça Machel, who I have to say is really the MVP, the most valuable player of this conference, I would say, right? You've been everywhere. Graça is a born freedom fighter. As a young woman, she joined Frelimo in her native Mozambique. She was a school teacher. She became the Secretary of Education in Mozambique, and she has been fighting for not only for education for young people, but human rights for people, and fighting against global poverty in a way that has made her one of the giants on the world stage. And she's been fantastic here for the last 2 days. Now, the gentleman in that hat, which he took off, and anyone who's known and covered South Africa for as long as I have knows this gentleman as the Arch. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu is not just the moral conscience of South Africa or Africa, but the world. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1984 at a time, now that's 16 years before Nelson Mandela emerged from prison, at a time when speaking out against apartheid made a whole heap of trouble for yourself, which is what he did for himself. He is the greatest and the most joyful, happy warrior for peace and justice of anybody. There are two people that I've heard use this great line from Martin Luther King, which is that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it tends towards justice. Barack Obama has said that, and Desmond Tutu has said that. But there's nobody living who has made that arc tend more towards justice than this gentleman, Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
Thank you.
He told me I'd get into heaven for that. And I owe you still. Now, to the left of us, and by the way, I also think it's a little bit of a disservice, I have to say, and Arch, I think you'll agree with me, that to have these two young women called part of the elders.
Yeah, absolutely.
That doesn't make sense to me. Okay, now we have Pokuaa, Gertrude, and Spencer. And rather than me do the disservice of introducing you, I'd love you to introduce yourselves, tell us where you're from, and just a little bit more than that, and then we'll start this dialogue. So Pokuaa, let's start with you.
Okay, well, my name is Pokuaa
Sorry about that.
Busumru-Banson. That's all right, I give it a lot. Pokuaa Busumru-Banson. I'm originally from Ghana. I was born in Ghana, Accra, but my parents moved to South Africa, so I've grown up most of my life in South Africa. I'm studying a BA Law at Wits University. I'm in my final year in my LLB, majoring in international relations, economics, and law. And at Wits University, University of Witwatersrand, and I'm passionate about human rights. I'm passionate about Africa, its leadership. I see so much potential, and I really believe that we have the potential, and I'm definitely going to be one of those who are going to live to see it pass in whatever I do. And so that's where I'm moving towards: human rights, the love of people, and the development of Africa.
My name is Spencer Horne. I'm from your host city, Cape Town. And I'm a graduate of the African Leadership Academy and an entering freshman into Harvard College this year. And my dream is really to be a part of the technological revolution which is taking place in Africa at the moment.
My name is Gertrude Kitongo. I am both Kenyan and Ugandan. I'm a student in Cedar City campus doing my final year in a bachelor's in business administration degree. Passionate about African and especially education. I believe in women empowerment as well, and I believe that Africa can do it, will do it, and yes, Africa, we can.
Now, the 6 of our fantastic folks on this panel actually met recently, May 30th, for a discussion in Johannesburg called A Game Plan for a Winning Continent. And what we want to start out by talking about is, what is that winning continent, and what is the game plan? And I'd like to ask everybody today, because this will be both an inspiring panel, but it'll also be a pragmatic one. And let me start with you, Arch. You had that discussion. What are the, you're not going to let me be serious, are you? What is the game plan for a winning continent from your perspective? What are the things that have to be achieved in the next few years to transform Africa?
Thank you very much. We've got some fantastic young people, and those of us who are in the afternoon of our lives look on and our hearts leap to see the potential that these young people have, the dreams that they dream. And I've said, that in many ways, we do have mind-boggling problems. And yet, we have the capacity to become a continent of compassion, a continent that recognizes that, as we say with something called Ubuntu, that my humanity is caught up in your humanity. And you have learned, or you are learning more and more, that this is one world. When climate change hits Iceland, everybody is affected. And we're saying, for goodness sake, when are we going to learn to know that God says we are one family? And that's not just a figure of speech. That's not just being sentimental. It's real politics. And so we're saying, a lot of our problems are actually, yes, we have to say man-made. We won't include you. They are man-made, and it's corruption, it's unaccountable government, it's people amassing wealth that would multiply if it was shared. And we're saying, hey, let's wake up. Africa's time has come. We've shown it to the doomsayers who said we couldn't meet deadlines, who thought, that they were going to meet lions at the street corner, that, hey, we can do it. We can do it. And we have to get our governments accountable. We've got to say, how can we shunt to one side 50% of our population, the women? Why don't we enlist the things that we've got? And may I say, as a last thing, very last thing, when I look at the history of the West, recent history of the West, you give me a great deal of hope.
So Mary, let me pose a question to you along these lines about how to make a winning continent. One of the things that I read that you wrote recently, and this is part and parcel of your whole career, is the idea that human rights and stability are not mutually exclusive. So much that has happened in the beginning of the 21st century, it's making people feel like they have to choose between human rights on the one hand and stability on the other. Let's talk about that and talk about how that applies to Africa.
I think it's more human rights on the one hand and security, especially post 9/11, on the other. And we really need to understand that the true security is rule of law, protection of human rights, peace, etc. I'm involved in a foundation, and we've heard Mo Ibrahim here himself, that he established on leadership in Africa with the Ibrahim Index of 53 African countries, and Graca serves on the prize committee of the foundation, as I also do. And I've really been impressed. We're measuring governance in the 53 countries, and actually overall there are very significant improvements. In countries that are coming from a very weak base, like Liberia, under Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, a very good woman president, Sierra Leone, countries that have had conflict relatively recently, as I saw when I was High Commissioner for Human Rights, but are now building up. Human rights becomes very relevant there too, to tackle issues like maternal health. It's not just a health issue. It's also an issue of violence, an issue of early child marriage, an issue of botched abortions, which have to be addressed in an honest way, an issue of discrimination, lack of land rights or property rights, or maybe just the married woman cannot leave the home without the permission of her husband. So it's all of these issues. But I must say, I am very encouraged by what I am seeing, and we've heard about the economic growth. I think that Africa is benefiting from a great deal of vitality now, and there does need to be, as Arch has said, much more accountability of leaders. And that's where these young leaders are going to come in, because they're not going to tolerate leaders who are not accountable, who are spending so much money on defense budgets and so little on education and health and these kinds of issues. And young people can hold to account now because you've got the internet, you've got the ways of tracking and gathering, mobilizing huge voice of people. And the other thing, and Graça is a leader in this, is the women in Africa. I'll be going to a meeting of African women's groups just before the African Union in Kampala in Uganda in mid-July, on the 20th, 21st of July. And there'll be about 200 women there who represent millions of women on the continent. And they are determined to influence the African Union. So that's another powerful networking that's going on. And I think this forum is showing Africa is moving in the right direction, needs to address issues of accountability, needs to address countries like Somalia. I went to Somalia in 1992 as President of Ireland. And I came to the UN, to Boutros Ghali, and actually the United States sent in troops, and we know the sad history of that. Somalia has been without a government and in problems since then, basically. It's not acceptable. There has to be more concerted attention again, because we know even from the pirates, we're all interconnected now. If a country like Somalia becomes a no-go area with violent people gathering to create problems elsewhere, they can do that. So I think we need to understand how important it is that this continent is on the move in the right direction and is by and large improving its governance, but also that we have to, for our own common interest, address more the Darfur's violence against women in the Democratic Republic of Congo and countries like Somalia.
And to that end, I think, Graça, you would agree with me. At the beginning of this conference a couple of days ago, so much of the discussion was about misconceptions about Africa. And by today, everyone is talking about the African Renaissance that is going on, and people have moved from, gee, I had the wrong idea, to I'm missing out on this great opportunity, which is one of the themes of this conference. And we were talking last night, in fact, you were saying that, apropos of what Mary was just saying, that in fact, Africa, of course, is not monolithic, and it's separated, but if you treat women as one group all across the continent, that might be the key to a winning formula.
Actually, there are two groups which are extremely vital if we are to win in this continent. It's women and youth. I am, of course, much more associated with women's movement. And yesterday, I mentioned it a bit when I was taking the platform here. There's no doubt that none of our nations can win, can build prosperity, can be a healthy society without giving the space at the center stage, women to take control of their lives and, of course, to lead the processes of development in our nations. But the second group is young people. Any of African countries will have over 50% of its population are young. Yep. Sometimes it's 45, but whatever, it means it's a significant social group which you can't move without. There has been an investment in education, but most of our young people who come out of our schools and universities, they are unemployed. Mm. And this brain power which is there has to be given space, not only in terms of generate wealth, but also having a say in the decision making. Our parliaments in this continent are urban, they are male, and it's middle age.
Except in Rwanda.
Yeah, except in Rwanda. But mostly, in terms of young people, I was coming now to the age group. Very few young people have an opportunity to shape policy, to devise what they want as a future. How can you make a nation prosper and move in development ignoring these two social groups? So this is one. But I think also one of it has been mentioned, I just want to put in different wording, leadership. Leadership in our continent has managed to get away without being brought to book. And I think it has to do with the fact that civil society organizations have been relatively weak. Mm-hmm. We need to strengthen that movement so that when we vote, we really vote for a program and we are not voting for a person. And when we vote, we know that our vote is powerful as we put a political party or a president in power. We have the power also to remove him. Yeah. But so far, the power of our vote has not been as effective. And at the end of the day, we begin to complain. We complain about leadership, our leaders. But it's because we don't have, the mechanisms are not in place for us to remove them immediately when we feel that they are not in a position of meeting our aspirations. And it's not what we voted them for. So I think you have two things, is these two social groups to be much more empowered, take control, actually. And second is leadership to know that they are where they are because they have been voted, but as they have been voted, they can be devoted. And that question of accountability, then it puts them in a position where they have to be committed to service. I'll finish with this. Leaders who are committed to service, to serve the people. Leaders who are committed to include every single citizen to benefit from wealth, from the well-being which is generated. You realize that many times our governments, they tend to be protecting one group against the other. No, a government is there for every single citizen. And inclusiveness, for me, I think it's one of the issues, again, which is extremely important for this continent to win. But I am encouraged, just to finish, I'm encouraged by what Mary has just said. This continent is changing. For those who came to visit, this continent is changing. There is really a movement which is coming, and it needs to be strengthened. It needs to be less fragmented. It needs to connect better so that it moves in terms of waves and it doesn't move here and there. But the continent is changing. And it's us, definitely, as Africans, who have to make sure that that movement, which is coming sooner than later, it's the one which leads whoever who would want to take public office.
So to take some words out of Graca's mouth, she said we need to empower the youth. And that is what we're going to do today, to empower you all. There's an extraordinary statistic in the McKinsey study that I think you all got about Africa, which is by the year 2040, 1 out of 5 young workers in the world will be Africans. That's an extraordinary repository of power and responsibility. So now I'm going to say to 3 of you, you're facing the elders over there. If you had the power that they once had in their respective areas, and therefore could do something very, very pragmatic right now, what would you do, Gertrude?
What would I do? It would definitely be with regards to education. Very often we find that we fought for women's rights, we fought for primary education, and yes, we have it right now. But what happens is when children come out of education or when they come out of primary or secondary school, they just sit at home because what next? Now, if I was in power right now, I would open up universities that could allow students who are from previously disadvantaged campuses or homes to go to university. Perhaps I would open CEDA East Africa and send students who are academically bright and who are vision-centered and who are willing to take Africa to the next level, go to school and come back and invest in Africa. That's what I would do.
Spencer, you're interested in science, right? And you
That's
did an experiment in high school about using biodegradable fuels. If you were the science czar of Africa, what would you do?
Well, besides just the sciences, I think one of the things I'd really like to see in the winning continent is greater cooperation between the countries in Africa. I think that's very, very important. If we're going to be a winning continent, it's got to be a united continent. But just in terms of the technology and the sciences, I think that's really going to help in almost all of the challenges that we're facing at the moment. It's been really exciting to be hearing in so many of the talks at the forum so far about the technology. But what I would like to see, or what I try to work on, is getting more indigenous solutions to the problems that we face. We've seen how when certain technologies are applied in Africa, we can do this sort of leapfrogging, the mobile sector being just one example of that, where we didn't have to install landlines everywhere. We jumped a few steps ahead. If we decided to tackle some of our problems using some of our best minds, who knows what we could come up with. We could come up with things that would be useful to the rest of the world as well. So that's really exciting to me, and I think that's what we really need.
Pokuaa.
Well, I think what I would do, I'd combine the two. I think education is great, but it shouldn't just be education. It should be education that encourages youngsters to have an innovative mind, youngsters to challenge the status quo in their societies, in their families, from the different backgrounds they come from. So, I mean, it's a great thing to go to university, but it's very sad if you go to university and you acquire the financial skill, but you still beat your wife at home. You know, then you haven't really learned much, but you have learned in the financial sector. So I think the education that, if I was in a position of power now, is I would encourage those who give the education to structure it in such a way that it's not just relaying information, but rather tapping into the thinking patterns, the mindsets of the people who come to those institutions, to actually just think differently, to apply the thing they're learning differently to their community to change it. And then I would also just, on the point of being innovative, encourage youngsters to think of ways to invent machinery and to think of ways to invent things to process our raw materials in something that we ourselves as African can call our own. They say that 25% of the geniuses are found in the villages, and I mean, that's really sad if we're still waiting for outside people to come and, plant machineries in our continent. I mean, we have the intellectual capacity, so I think those are the two things that I definitely focus on is, the kind of education, the impact of the education. It's very good, but it must be one that really challenges us to think out of the box. And then I would also then just encourage young people to really be creative about the way they go about solving Africa's problems. Yes, we need definitely mines that are going to mine our raw materials, but we have those like Spencer who's going to go and study mechanical engineering. Surely he's a genius and he can come up with a machine too. So, mine are good. So that's definitely what I would push for if I was a person in leadership.
Now, of course, there's the old saying that youth is wasted on the young, although it obviously isn't wasted on you all. And sometimes experience is wasted on the middle-aged. But since you have already met and you've already in some ways formed a kind of mentor-mentee situation, what I would do now is ask each of you, and I'll start with you again, Arch. If Spencer is your boy, and he's, how old are you, 19?
Yep.
What do you know now that you didn't know then, when you were Spencer's age, that you can give him advice to say, to find a shortcut, to find a way to get through life in a way that is positive and realize the values that you have fought for all of your life?
Let me have a preamble. And the preamble is, these are fantastic young people. I mean, I'm just blown listening to them, and I'm actually certain when I was their age, one, I wasn't as articulate.
Yeah.
I would have been shaking in my pants to be sitting here and just listen to you. Yeah. I mean, you're fantastic. My heart just leaps. Oh, you are fantastic. But I think, it is the belief, we come out of situations that have damaged us. We are a wounded people, many of us. And I would say one of the most important things would be for you to know that God didn't make a mistake creating you African.
That's good.
And that's not. I just hope, I mean, that you would have a proper self-assurance. I tell people a story that shocks me. I mean, each time it's about me going for the first time to Nigeria, and in the 1970s, and I'm going to be traveling to Jos. I arrive, and I'm taking a domestic flight, and when I get onto the plane, I look inside the cockpit, and both pilots are black, and I grow inches because I've come from a place that said blacks can't do it, and we take off, and it's a smooth takeoff, and I say, yeah, these guys are real, man. And then we hit the mother and father of turbulence. I still cannot believe that the first thought that came into my head was, ooh. Are those blacks going to be able to do it? there is no white man in now. Yeah, I mean, in a way, you should laugh, but in another way, it's awful. That injustice and oppression isn't just something that makes you feel pained. It makes you doubt that you're a child of God. So I would say to you, hey, walk tall, knowing that you are something special, created by God. And I would want you to push what we've been saying about leadership, because leadership is important. I mean, you've seen what a leader like Nyerere can do, a leader like Madiba. I mean, how you can inspire people, and it is usually, almost certainly, a leadership that is there for the sake of the led. That you have to demand, as you were saying, leaders who know that they are accountable to you. And that because we have this self-assurance, this pride in being black, in being African, you say, yeah, this thing, Ubuntu, this being able to care for one another, knowing that when I subvert your humanity, whether I like it or not, my humanity is subverted as well. And so caring for the other in a wonderful way comes back to enrich you. I would say, but you are going to discover, as we discovered, that original sin doesn't know racial discrimination. That people we thought were idealistic, altruistic, succumb to the same temptations to use power for self-aggrandizement. Yes.
So Mary, I think both of these young women might be interested in studying the law. What advice would you give them about how to use that as a tool for justice?
We've already had some of these conversations because we were lucky enough to meet these three with a number of other young from different countries of Africa in May when we were here as elders. And it really, as Arch said, is stunning. It's hard to say anything but the highest sense of the potential of these young people. I was just thinking that probably the only thing that might be helpful in a way is to, reveal that I made a terrible mistake at an early stage. And it might be a mistake that's relevant to some of the issues on this continent. I won't go into the background to it, but I was elected to the Irish Senate at the age of 25, and I had a platform. And the first item on the platform was to amend the family planning law in Ireland. And that made absolute sense to me. I was a Harvard Law School graduate, and I was full of the arrogance of I know what to do. And I drafted with two male senator colleagues a simple bill because married women in Ireland couldn't use the contraceptive pill unless they had cycle regulation problems. And it must have been the Irish weather, but an awful lot of women had cycle regulation problems. And it wasn't against the law to use a condom, but it was against the criminal law to either buy or sell a condom. But if you could get one without either buying or selling it, you could use it, and that was fine. And so it was simple to draft a law. And we tabled it, and to say the least of it, all hell broke loose. I became notorious in my own country. I was very shook by the hate mail I was getting. I was denounced by bishops, Catholic bishops. I'm a Catholic. And it really hurt. I mean, I remember feeling quite destabilized. And 10 years later, the law was changed because the culture had absorbed that you could talk about sex, you could talk about this. And I didn't understand. I thought I could just do it by putting in a piece of legislation because I was smart. That wasn't actually how you will have to change a lot of things about women and violence and attitudes and early child marriage. All of these things aren't just about law, though law is very important. They're also about education, as you've rightly said, and really getting into the heart of the culture and empowering people themselves to move on, as the Irish people moved on and the government brought in legislation. But that was a good lesson for me, and I hope it might help.
So Graça, by the time you were the age of these young people, you were already a member of a revolutionary movement. They are all growing up not knowing about the vestiges of colonialism. Even apartheid is a distant memory and didn't affect them in their lifetime, which is not to say the legacy of it doesn't affect you now. But you grew up in a different environment. What is it that you learned that they don't know that might come back to haunt them? And what are the advantages that they have that you didn't have because they grew up without these horrors?
Well, maybe I'll begin by the advantage, the advantage they have. And Arch mentioned this, actually. The fact that at this age, they have the kind of education they have. And they don't even put in a situation where they question their identity. You know, I became Mozambican. To say I'm Mozambican and to have the identity of Mozambican when I was 19. I grew, as they were calling me, like Portuguese East African. That's how I was being called. They have the advantage of being born and grow as Ghanaian, South African, Kenyan, and they can take pride of that without even questioning. It's a wonderful thing. We as adults, we don't talk about this, of how important it is to be yourself, to have your own identity. Sorry, I'm touching this. Your identity. This is one. The second thing, which is also advantage to them, is the quality of education they have. Definitely, for them to be able to articulate their thinking and how they do, it's because they had education which allowed them to blossom, their potential. It's a huge. Now, I'm saying that these things today are still a privilege. unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not all children of our continent who have the same opportunities. So I'm saying to them, you are privileged, you were born free, you are privileged, you have the quality of education you have. You are privileged even to be given a platform like this to express yourself. Privilege comes always with a huge responsibility. It's a huge responsibility. The two faces, this is privilege, this is responsibility in your hand. And you have to use these privileges to bring all the others, young like you or much younger, to get exactly the same rights which you have. This is one. The other thing I would like to say, and the Arch also touched upon, you know, many of the leaders we're talking about today, not all, but many of them, they have been, you know, very full of good ideas, and even at the beginning of when they took power, they were very positive, you know, but they changed. What I want to say is, and they changed at a point where they changed constitution to keep themselves in the positions where they are, to believe that they are indispensable for the nations to go forward. What I want to say is that keep true to yourself. What you believe, the same passion, the same clarity, the same passion you have today, keep it. Keep it, because it's possible. You have a very good example. With such a sense of humor at his age, he is equal to himself from the time we came to know him. That is something you cultivate. It doesn't happen by itself. What you think and what you feel and what you dream for this continent, you have to keep it even when you are 50, 60, 70. That's the way you will be able then to effect the change which our continent needs, without betraying your own ideals of your dreams of youth, without betraying the trust and the confidence which the people have definitely in you. But finally, I think I would also say what I have learned, you were asking at this age. You know, because the circumstances were very, very different. As I said, I grew in a very different setting. But I learned one important lesson which has helped me in the rest of my life. Never do it alone. Yeah. Never do it alone. You will never be successful if you believe very much in yourself and you think you can change it. No, the strength of whatever you are going to do is to harness the capacity and the ability, the genius of many other people who are working, and to build the bigger strength, the bigger genius. And that's what makes, even in leadership, that's what makes leaders to be successful. It's not the individualistic point of view of being yourself and trying to. And I learned this from my own family, how I came in. And along life, until today, I'm not able to do anything alone. Until today.
I could listen to this all day, but our time, alas, is up. But it's a lovely way to end with the elders giving advice to the youngers. I hope you appreciate the platform. I hope you appreciate the advice that they've given you. And I know you appreciate the access to the youth here. It has been a fantastic panel. It has represented the best and most insightful parts of this conference. It's been inspiring and practical at the same time. So let's give a round of applause to our panelists.
To you.
We have two more very special things. And the first special thing that we have is that I'm going to ask Archbishop Tutu to go to the podium to say a few final words, followed by Minister Davies thanking. I said to that earlier. He said, just don't say a few. and then Minister Davies will thank everybody for what has been a really extraordinary conference and for the support of the South African government. And while you're walking to the podium, I'm going to say a few more words about you. You've heard the Arch mention the great African word and concept. Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm glad I don't have to follow him. He's mentioned the concept of Ubuntu, and you are really the apostle of Ubuntu. And the greatest definition I've ever heard of it, which is yours, is that human beings are human beings through each other. People are people through each other. And you've done more than any other human being to make us all more human. So you are the father of Ubuntu, and one of the things that will continue that great legacy is the Desmond Tutu Peace Center, which I hope you'll mention, which will be across the street from this great building, and we will do everything we can to help you achieve that. Okay. Arch, Desmond Tutu.
More.
Did you see the gesture he's making? Okay. Take it away.
Thank you so very, very much. I'm a wonderful stand-in. I'm a very, very good stage prop. When we were bidding for this World Cup, we traveled around with Nelson Mandela and other people, and we went to the West Indies on one occasion, and we went to Trinidad and Tobago, and then we had to go, I think, to Antigua or Grenada or somewhere. Madiba couldn't accompany us. And I arrived and I was told, you are going to have to stand in for Nelson Mandela. So I've never seen people so disappointed. I mean, when I got into the room and they announced that Nelson Mandela has had to go back to South Africa, and this is the one who's going to. I didn't know the English expression, a face falling. I looked around the room, and you saw actually, I mean, people's faces falling. And today, I am fulfilling my vocation to be a stand-in. The Deputy President should have been here, but they've asked me to do so. Right, so here is the stand-in. You did hear of that lady who greeted me in San Francisco and said, hello, Archbishop Mandela. So sort of getting two for the price of one. I am really delighted to have this opportunity to say just a very few words to bid you farewell. Thank you for coming. Thank you. It's fantastic. It's fantastic when, for a very long time, you have been a pariah. It's fantastic when, for so long, you were a repulsive caterpillar. And then you are transformed, into a gorgeous butterfly. And the world that used to shun you comes to your doorstep. Thank you. Thank you. And we hope you will return. This is the very first time that a global forum has been held here, and we hope it isn't the last time that it'll happen on the African continent. Maybe next time when we have the Olympic Games in Africa. Is that the next time you are coming? The theme has been the new global opportunity. I think all of us Africans, and as you know, you are all Africans. You have come back home. But for us, it has been a fantastic thing. And to think of the new global opportunity. Mo Abraham indicated in his address that this is the continent where it is happening, where you are going to be getting unprecedented returns. There's another opportunity. We have a crisis. Let's not waste the crisis. Let's squeeze the maximum benefit out of it. And Bill Clinton said yesterday, didn't he, that we have a skewed economic system. Just think of subsidies. You know that they pay $2 a day for each cow in the European market or whatever. And there are people in most parts of the world who live on less than $1 a day. And try as hard as we might, we're not going to have stability if we have such a skewed economic relationship, where you say to Africa and other developing countries, open up your, this is the free market system. And they do that. And then they try to sell their goods to yourselves, and they find they've got all these wonderful barriers to deal with. I was saying, as we were discussing with these fantastic young people, until we learn the one lesson I think God is trying God's darndest to teach us, we're always going to come a cropper. And it really is that we are members of one family. And you have to ask yourself, if we are members of one family, how come we can spend so many billions on instruments of death and destruction when we know that a minute fraction of those budgets would ensure that children, everywhere in the world would have clean water to drink, would have enough food to eat. Our sisters and brothers, everywhere. That's a revolution that has got to happen in our thinking. And I've already indicated to you just how in awe I am of these young people, but of young people everywhere in the world who dream dreams about a world that is without war. They say, let's make poverty history. It's young people mainly. And you've heard how my gorgeous fellow elders have been pushing this business about women. In our part of the world, we say a mother can share even the eye of a fly. And women have demonstrated this times without number. In Liberia, one of the ways in which peace happened was when the women said, we've had enough of this. We've had enough of our children being killed. And they told their menfolk, we are praying the devil back to hell, which is the title of a movie about them. And so we have an incredible resource in our women folk. And we hope, that we in Africa will tap into this resource. I hope, that because you have had decision makers, political decision makers, financial decision makers, that we will see action happen as a result of what has taken place here. That now that the world's eyes are on Africa because of the World Cup, and it's done an incredible thing for us. It has told us, yes, we can do this. But more than this, we in South Africa, yet again, have been shown just how we are, yes, a rainbow people, but that we are there for one another. It's been an incredibly exhilarating time, and I've said I'm going to wear this until the last match, just to pay tribute to those young men who have shown what we have it in ourselves to become. And so we look to you. We look to you to work with us. This is a continent about to make a leap. And we know that you are very, very smart people. We pray that you are going to help us eradicate the poverty in this the cradle of humankind. You will help us with all of the skills that you have You heard these young people speak about education. We hope that you will be able to assist us to reduce the disease burden of Africa. I hope that you will take away some of the enthusiasm and hope, not optimism, the hope that we experienced as these young people spoke. You know something? Sometimes I think God looks, and God sees Zimbabwe, God sees Darfur, God sees Gaza, God sees Burma, Tibet. God sees, and God cries. And God says, whatever got into me to create this lot. And then God looks again and sees a global forum. And God sees you, and a smile breaks over God's face. And it's like sunshine breaking through the rain. And God says, yes, they vindicate me. For you are those who are going to make this a better world, a caring world, a compassionate world, a world of laughter and joy, a world of caring. And God says, yeah. That is why I created them. And I hope you will want to join me in thanking Fortune, Time, and CNN for holding such an impressive global forum. Why don't we clap them? Yeah. And please come back. We just might organize 1 or 2 lions in the street corner.